This week on Planet Internet, we are talking about fake news versus censorship. Where are we falling in the scale of crazies? We're gonna find out. On this episode of the Hacker Noon podcast, I am joined by Ellen Stevens, who is our lovely editorial assistant, and Zaeem, who is one of our editors, junior editors. Welcome, guys. Thank you for joining the pod today.
Hello.
Hacker Noon podcast.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Yay. So, to start off, I wanted to throw back to a beautiful little Hacker Noon article. I don't know if you guys read it. It's a little bit of an older one. We are throwing back to around February 2021 when we were kind of more so in the internet age of Trump and the election and the storming of the wall kind of thing. So that's kind of where we're starting off today. One of the pieces of this article that I really liked, which by the way is on Hacker Noon and is titled Fake News versus Censorship in the Battle for the Internet by Charmini. And I wanted to read out one of the quotes from this article because I thought it was really interesting. It is, here we go. Most legal systems around the world sets limits for the freedom of speech, especially in cases when it conflicts with the rights and protections such as slander, pornography, intellectual property. Therefore, when companies talk about coordinating terrorist attacks, that's a no-go. That's not a direct quote, that part. Okay. So, yeah, I just wanted to chat about this because essentially what we're talking about is the battle between the freedom of speech versus protecting people against these things that are not so good, such as slander, pornography, and stealing intellectual property. So, Ellen, what are your thoughts around the censorship versus freedom of speech movement and issue that we're having?
Sure, yeah. So I think frequently people don't really understand, that freedom of speech actually does have certain restrictions in a sense, right? And you want it to have these restrictions. Well, if you're within the sort of average scope of functioning people. So you
Yes.
probably don't want to see various torture videos. You probably don't want to see various, inappropriate images of, different humans. So there is a certain level of restriction that I think in general people would agree needs to happen. Absolutely. I think what really becomes a problem is when governments try to really significantly limit creative expression, what people can think in terms of critical analysis of the government, and very, very biased perspectives, because ultimately that leads to a very easy way to control people. And so, on the one hand, maybe it could have the result of a very compliant population, but it also could be used by other nations to destabilize a particular nation. So I think a system where you have checks and balances, which actually includes this idea of freedom of speech, in order to sort of be able to criticize various policies, in order to hopefully achieve something that is the most closest to the truth, I think is worth fighting for sure. So that's something that I think on the topic.
Yeah, for sure. And we will try and get down to like more specifics on what we think those bounds should be that are put in place that should limit freedom of speech versus censorship. So, and another thing that you said is, yes, it can influence a country. And so one of the things that this article talks about, which was Parler, which was now infamously known to be one of the platforms that helped coordinate the Capitol attack back in 2020. And following the Capitol attack, Parler was taken offline by AWS. So a lot of people were saying that that was a blatant attack on free speech, and that Parler should have been left up because it was it was not allowing people to speak their mind. But Zaeem, as someone who is on the other side of the world over in Pakistan, what are your thoughts on freedom of speech and how it's being controlled?
So in Pakistan, basically, we do have a lot more checks and balances. Like the government has repeatedly banned TikTok, for example, because of some of the things mentioned, like inappropriate images and stuff like that. We actually had a huge ban on YouTube for quite a while, a few years back. And I think it remained banned for 2 or 3 years, YouTube in Pakistan, because of some blasphemous content that was posted on there, and YouTube refused to remove it.
Yeah.
So I think both forms have their place. I mean, like Ellen was saying, there's a place for checks and balances, but sometimes it can go overboard, like implement too many restrictions that
Right.
not just for the sake of stopping harmful content, but actually which just stops people from expressing themselves. And then there's a form of free speech and moderation that's implemented on by the companies these days. So in the age of social media, like Parler, for instance, had basically no censorship or moderation, and that basically
Yeah.
allowed for that attack on Capitol Hill to happen and be coordinated on the platform. While Facebook, for instance, has more moderation, you could say, or Twitter has more moderation, you could say, to stop these. So yeah, I think it's sort of a balance
Yeah.
that needs to
Right.
be in place.
And so, where do you fall on the scale between a country like America, for example, where, we have the YouTubes and the Gmails and the Facebooks, versus China, for example, where Facebook is not accessible? Where do you fall on the scale of letting people access technology?
I definitely fall on the US side. China is one of those like egregious forms of censorship and moderation that basically curb everything except the propaganda that's being put out by the government. So yeah,
we have two
definitely
extremes going on.
there should be checks and balances, but not that extreme to the
Yeah.
extent of China.
All right, cool. So let's take a little hop over to the next story that I have, which is about Litecoin. So this was in the news recently. This is a Mashable article that I checked out. It's called "No, Walmart will not be accepting Litecoin. Here's how people were duped." So excellent setup for that. A little while ago on Monday morning, I think it was this week, maybe it was last week, Litecoin Twitter account tweeted that Walmart was going to now be accepting Litecoin as a payment, and as it turns out, that Twitter account was actually being run by fans of Litecoin or just people who are invested in it and not the actual creators, and it was fake news. So, but it was picked up by major news articles, and there was a press release that was distributed and everything. So the fake news got way out of control and a bunch of people started buying Litecoin. The price went up like crazy. CNBC was tweeting about it, and then all of a sudden, just as quick as it came up, people discovered that the press release was fake and that Litecoin Twitter account was not registered by the actual like people behind Litecoin. So the price went up and then it went way down. So a lot of people lost some money on Litecoin this week. So maybe if there had been some more checks and balances in place, something like this would not have occurred. But Ellen, where are your thoughts at around Litecoin and how the fake news of this piece just took off like crazy?
Yeah, so this is concerning. Because it came from what is deemed to be a reputable press wire service. So apparently they created, whomever this was, created an account to look like I think one of the officials of Walmart. And so unfortunately they didn't check it properly. And so, sometimes in news that definitely can happen. But it does make me think of, when we hear about things like cryptocurrency and we hear about this, decentralization, this, no sort of authority kind of figure. And then you hear stories like this. Well, okay, so here you have a situation where Litecoin, right? Their organizers allegedly did not do this. It was people who are fans of Litecoin who decided to do this. So it's like, when you don't have an authority essentially that is verifying information or verifying what is real and what isn't, then you can have some serious consequences. As here, like, yes, people lost money and it was, but it was kind of almost quickly dealt with, I think. But if you think about this, on a much larger scale, that is quite frightening, and I think it would be wonderful if more news organizations actually had it in their budget for people to do proper research, instead of just going with it, like whatever the trending
release.
topic. Yeah, just
all it takes is a press release.
Well, but that's, it's this is a huge issue, actually. And you see it happen on major news sources constantly. There's a blurred line between what is actual news and what is editorializing. So historically in journalism, you're supposed to present a balanced side of a story, and you're supposed to fact check. You're not supposed to just go on air and state your opinion. If you're trying to do your due diligence, and that seems to be happening less and less. So this is yet, I think, another symptom of a culture where per click revenue is more important than actual fact. So it says
the price of Litecoin spiked from around 170 before the press release was distributed to more than 230 within a matter of minutes. So yeah, quite a big jump. Now, Zaeem, your other job, aside from being a beautiful junior editor at Hacker Noon, is a journalist. So I would love to hear your thoughts on fact-checking and journalism.
Yeah, I sort of agree with Ellen in the sense that, in today, fact checking has taken sort of a backseat for some news organizations that just want immediate views or just want the tweet out there as fast as possible or the news out there as fast as possible without looking at the actual content uh, that is being presented, and that definitely gives bad actors, like the people here, a chance to do this stuff. Basically, I mean, this was sort of a very well orchestrated, plan, so to speak. I mean, they went whoever did this, they went through the effort of creating a separate domain, email addresses under that domain, under Walmart's executives' names, and then uh, went through the effort of putting out a press release and sending it to an authentic newswire service. So it was a very well thought out. Um,
But in journalism,
and
is that common?
that sort of the legitimacy of that newswire, I think that threw a lot of news organizations off as well,
Yeah.
uh, because it's coming from a very authentic newswire that always gets press releases from actual companies. So
Yeah.
in this sense, it just
They just did everything
created sort of
right.
the perfect storm.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that common in journalism though? Like that you would get so many bogus press releases?
No, definitely not. Like I said, this was definitely a one-off instance that rarely, if ever, happens. So this was one of just those things. I mean, and I think the people behind the Twitter account and the ones who sent the press release, they're separate people. I think the Twitter account just tweeted out the press release. They didn't.
Yeah.
They weren't behind. They weren't behind sending the press release, but a lot of news organizations followed that as well. In retweeting that tweet from the Litecoin account. So yeah, I think yeah, it definitely with fake news, uh, you know, uh, being promoted so much these days. It's definitely in the interest of news organizations to do more fact checking. Uh,
But now that we know the outcome of what happened and how it happened, what kind of checks and balances do you think should have been put in place?
what sort of checks and balances? Yeah, first seeing if in this case the press release was obviously coming from a legitimate source, but that's one of the first things to see if the press release is coming from a legitimate source. And then in this case, uh, the the domain name was the actual red flag, that you know that's not the actual Walmart domain name, or not the actual email address of the executive who's sending out the press release. So that was the major red flag.
It was probably
And
an
the
intern.
second, yeah, and the second major red flag was why Litecoin? I mean, Litecoin, I mean, it's
Yeah.
gone up in price like every cryptocurrency, but why not Bitcoin? Why not
Yeah.
Dogecoin? uh, which are like more popular these days. Why not Ethereum? So yeah, Litecoin has been sort of a very benign, sort of on the sideline sort of cryptocurrency for the
Yeah.
most
What
part.
even is
Uh,
Litecoin? Get out of here.
yeah, yeah. So I mean that was the second red flag. Why would such a huge corporation like Walmart would choose such a sort of not as popular cryptocurrency to
Yeah.
accept?
Yeah, definitely. So, okay. Yeah, just more thinking. No more
Yeah,
thought needed
just
to go
more
into
critical
this,
thinking,
basically. Okay. Yeah. Cool. All right, let's move over to the next article that I have for you, which is an insider article about Facebook. So Facebook is under fire this week because their algorithm is being questioned. A report was released that said that Facebook quietly lets 5.8 million politicians and celebrities get special enforcement of its rules. Ooh, are we surprised? No. But the company's X-Check system has protected people like Donald Trump, Doug the Pug, and other influential people and figures in the industry for the algorithm, so that if they discuss anything that is quote-unquote PR risky, then the fact that they're still influential means that it doesn't matter. So even though they're posting content that other people would not necessarily be able to post, or slash that other people's content would not be as popular with the same kind of wording, because they are exempted from this part of the algorithm. So Ellen, does this piece of news surprise you at all?
Actually, a little bit it does, because I've seen a lot of what people who would be deemed influential have their work actually taken off the platform.
Mm-hmm.
So, it is interesting to me that there is such a system in place, because if you think about, I'm surprised, because I was under the impression that there were quite a number of different types of sort of influential people that would get their content removed sort of on a regular basis. And they frequently have to appeal, and they actually end up winning a lot of the time, because they present factual information. I guess maybe you have to be like of some sort of next level for this to happen. But it is unfortunate, because the story that they shared here was, and I didn't know who this was, but apparently this Neymar, I don't know. Apparently he's a football player. Maybe
Yeah, he's
it's
a
for
football
Some
player.
people are probably screaming right now.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you have your sports, and I welcome regular exercise, but no. So anyways, this person decided to post something. I think that it's a former partner's text or something.
Yeah.
But it also showed her name and nude images of her. And so they couldn't do anything from removing it for a while there. And it was seen by about 56 million users. So that's extraordinarily inappropriate on so many different levels. That just surpasses, like, there's one thing if you said something maybe that's not politically correct, but you're speaking about it in an intelligent way, and you're presenting actual statistics, and not only statistics, but research from proper academic sources. So that's one thing. But then you have something like this, which should be like an obvious ban. It's I don't. If Facebook, I think, is supposed to be more sort of targeted towards family, and so this idea that something like this could go through is just profoundly questionable to me. Whereas they ban other people left, right, and center. I was a little bit surprised. I guess I shouldn't be, because Facebook has come under fire for a lot of different things.
Instagram algorithm is also under fire, but not as much as Facebook is, like, in this way this week, because of this report that was released this week. Zaeem, where are your thoughts at around having different rules for speech for different people?
Yeah, that doesn't really surprise me when it comes to Facebook. I mean, Facebook hasn't been really a trustworthy social network for quite a long time now. Ever since that Cambridge Analytica thing happened, where like they basically sold uh, u actual user data, personalized user data to a company, which then just used it for political ads and stuff. So yeah, that it's sort of not really surprising. And Facebook also has been, I think Facebook's moderation has been all over the place when it comes to geography as well. I mean, in Myanmar, where there's basically like a genocide going on, they allow people from Myanmar to post anything on Facebook, including graphic images, including
Yeah.
incitements to violence and stuff like that, and that isn't moderated at all.
Yeah.
While if you're in the US and if you post something like that, it gets taken down almost immediately. So it's sort of surprising in the sense that they would allow uh, uh, a bunch of people special permissions, a lot of whom I won't want to name names. A lot of whom have don't have a history, a very good history or track record of putting out wholesome content. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's
But I feel like it's even
definitely.
troubling that anyone can have different rules for different speech. Like, this article obviously was written, or maybe not, I don't know, was written by someone on the left because they mentioned that Donald Trump has access to this special privilege or whatever. But there's got to be people on the left that also have this special
Yeah,
privilege
definitely.
that are maybe saying things that are not true, and or just the fact that they even have it is like not okay. The algorithm should be fair for everyone. And yeah, you're totally right. I went to Myanmar in 2019 and I made some friends there, and we have each other on Facebook. And when I was there, they were like showing me pictures of like bodies and stuff and like war stuff. But I was like, what the hell? And they're just like, yeah, we just use it. Like,
Wow.
it's like their tea shop, but digitally. And they just kind of put all of their pictures up there. And it's wild. Like, I was shocked that they were sharing that stuff on Facebook. It was very interesting to me. But yeah, I think it's really interesting. I don't think that it's surprising either that these different people have different rules, just based on like what the algorithm is kind of showing us. And I think it's challenging because it then again comes back down to the question of fake news versus censorship and what we should be allowing people to say versus not say, and what is okay and what is not okay. And the fact that Facebook has to decide that and govern that in their own rules must be very challenging, but having different rules of speech for different people is not ideal for sure. Yeah.
So I just, yeah. So, I do agree that, it is really strange to have different rules in terms of freedom of speech for different people. So the thing, though, that I like to think of things of like, why would that happen? And I do think it's very likely. I don't know if it's necessarily because they believe that, person so and so should be able to share whatever, as opposed to person so and so that can't. It's just when you think of like celebrities and people who are well known, the amount of targeting that they experience on a regular basis is quite profound, right? So if you're a celebrity and you have an account, there's going to be constant, like, like people are just like going to be flagging your stuff for absolutely no reason sometimes, because they don't like you or they're jealous or they think it's funny, right? So, the way our culture actually treats celebrities, yeah, sure, some of them make quite a bit of money, but they also have to handle quite a very toxic and just insane response to things. People often forget that these people are people. And so I think it's very possible that it was just maybe strictly from that perspective that, like they just probably can't deal with the amount of feedback that comes from those accounts. But that's just a theory. It could be totally wrong.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I definitely think that that could be the case. And I think that as we progress into 2020, into 2021, and as things like the Black Lives Matter movement and things like that come up, Facebook and other companies will put more and more emphasis on making free speech fair for everyone. And maybe this wasn't as big of an issue or as prevalent in today's society or as important to people as it was before, but as this becomes more and more important to people, Facebook theoretically should care more and more and work harder and harder to solve this problem. So hopefully we're just like in this weird in-between time of like trying to tell Facebook that we care about this kind of thing of free speech and equal rights across the platform, while they develop in the back end and trying to work towards a more fair platform. So if you want to read
hopefully.
that article or that report, it's on the Wall Street Journal, but behind a paywall. So I linked to the Insider article instead because we hate paywalls.
There's actually
Anyways,
some Google foo you can do to actually access it for free.
yes.
Yes, we have a plugin.
Or
you can find
you
it on the
use-
nav bar.
Yes, the free the internet plugin. Thank you.
Free
Hacker
internet.
Cam.
Yep.
Yeah, but I think Ellen's theory that it might be because celebrities get a lot of pushback. I think that's interesting, but I stand sort of on the other side of things on this, because I mean, if this is actually true, I mean, it would have been a very conscious decision to implement such an algorithm to exclude an X amount of people, and that might basically just stem from money, basically, because celebrities market a lot of stuff through Facebook as well.
Yeah.
And Facebook gets a significant part of its earnings from ad revenue. So that might be one of the reasons behind them implementing such a thing. But
Yeah.
again, who's to say
That sounds
if
accurate.
it's true? Because but who's to say if it's true? Because the Wall Street Journal cited documents reviewed by them, and that's a trick actually they do to avoid getting sued.
Oh,
Because
okay.
when they get sued, they can say, "Oh, we just reviewed the documents; we don't have them."
Yeah. Okay, all right. I also want to say that I love that the Business Insider chose this like strangely teary-eyed photo of Mark Zuckerberg for their cover.
Lizard
it.
Zuckerberg.
And Mark Zuckerberg, all about that triple bottom line. Let's go. The final piece that I want to chat about today is this Texas governor piece. So this week, the Texas governor, Greg Abbott, signed a social media censorship bill into law. And this bill essentially requires social media companies with more than 50 million monthly users, so think your Facebooks and Instagrams of Twitters of the world, and forces them to disclose their content moderation policies so that the platform is more fair for everyone. I thought this was really interesting because where this is coming from is from the right. So Republicans are actually taking to the social media giants to question the social media algorithms because they are questioning that it's more catered towards the left. So it was really interesting to read the article from this perspective. Ellen, were you familiar with this article prior to this new bill prior to reading this article?
It's possible I heard something about this prior to reading the article, but I'm aware of the situation, so I understand why they would do this. It's true. I listen to voices on both sides of the spectrum. And it does seem like conservative voices are frequently just taken off the air. And they frequently do have to provide evidence for everything that they're saying, whereas people on the left frequently say whatever it is they want, and they are not fact checked properly as often as at least that's what it seems like. But since you have actual legislators trying to address this, and you have to think about it. If you want an actual honest discussion, you need to be able to handle multiple perspectives. That's just the way it is. And this,
I agree.
A trend, and it's happening actually on both sides, make me a little frustrated, because I would like if people would break down a particular policy, and then the research associated with the policy. Just because you want to prove to the world that you're a good person and you want to virtue signal or what have you, it doesn't mean that your policy is actually going to do the things you think it's going to do. And in order to create effective policies that are actually going to bring change, that are actually going to help the groups that you want to help, then you need to be willing to hear proper criticism about this. And both sides, when you listen to the left, it's, oh, the right, yada, yada, yada. When you listen to the right, it's, oh, the left, yada, yada, yada. It's so divisive, and it's not any one side that's really, pushing. It's really painful to listen, because sometimes you'll have these great voices. They'll break stuff down for you. They'll go into the research, and then it's like, oh, the left this. And it's like, stop. If we could just maybe alter the culture to be a little bit, more balanced.
We have to do all of that, all while making sure that it's not fake news and making sure that the content is actually legitimate and those facts are real. So the onus falls onto so many people to make sure that all of this stuff is real. Zaeem, do you think that this bill will be a good thing for people and for more clarity?
I think it can like with all legislations, it can go both ways. It does have the potential to allow more conservative voices onto the platform, but at the same time, it can also have the potential to again have some bad actors posting and propagating fake news as well. And social media now, because of the legislation, would have to do more in order to ban those users or take them off the platform. So it can go both ways, definitely.
All right, we will have to see how this unfolds, but it will be very exciting to hear about. Well, that was it for this week on Planet Internet. Thank you so much for listening. I very much appreciated the discussion that we had of censorship versus fake news. Hopefully, as the world progresses, we fall into a happy medium or a happier medium than when we are where we're at right now, and that free speech is possible while also enforcing the general safety of everyone. But yes, thank you so much for listening to this week on Planet Internet. If you like this episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to it. You listen to me as your podcast host, Amy Tom, Ellen Stevens, and Zaeem as guests. This episode was hosted by me, produced by Hacker Noon, and edited by our lovely audio wizard, Alex. Stay weird. I'll see you on the internet. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Hacker Noon Podcast.